Great day to you all. Let's talk about a wonderful workshop. It's called Making Decisions Under Pressure. Let's think about that for just a moment. Who makes decisions under pressure? Most of us do, right? Whether it's you in IT or marketing or sales, or you're a CEO of the company, or you're the receptionist. It doesn't matter where you are in a company, in an organization, right? In an environment, right? We all make decisions, and some of those decisions are under pressure. And so, great day to you. Well, let's talk about that. Let's introduce the topic and let's talk about that. So I'm Al Batinga, and the title is, as you can see, Making Decisions Under Pressure. And I believe that all of us do that some way, shape, or form, right? And my name is Al Batinga, and my partner in crime, so to speak, is Deanna Mendeville. And so, but the team of us usually tag team a class when we have the opportunity to work together. And so let's talk about the topics. What are the topics that we cover in this exciting class with all kinds of good exercises and the like, right? Let's talk through that as we go along. So our agenda, let's talk about what are decisions, right? And so you may look at this and say, oh, decisions, I don't have a real crisp definition, but a decision is just making a choice. Love it. It's a very simple concept, right? Let's make a choice. And so those are decisions. Now, if you go to Google, they'll have all kinds of other decisions. I look at it as it's when we reach a crossroads where we have to take a path. And so if you're deciding on what software to use as your ERP, right, you'll probably narrow it down to 5 different enterprise resource planning software potential, right? And so you have 5 different ones, and you'll probably narrow it down to 3, and then you'll narrow it down to 2. And then you'll ultimately make a decision based on all kinds of criteria. Now, what happens when that decision is under duress? A big decision like that, right? An ERP influences the whole organization. Everybody's going to get affected. And so that's the question we're going to consider now. So what is pressure? And so pressure, just from a purely generic definition, is any time we're forced to do something without added time, money, or influence, or decisions, or information, right? We're under duress to meet a deadline. We're under duress to meet a project, a budget. Any kind of pressure is out there. The executive who's sponsoring this project is very high profile, and he or she wants that to happen because it's something that is really needed and will put the company in a different arena. That's pressure, right? Those are pressures that you and I deal with on a regular basis. And so the next question is, why make decisions under pressure? You may look at this and say, oh, isn't that obvious? Because we have to make decisions under pressure. Well, let's roll that back a little bit. Are there decisions made under pressure that shouldn't be? In other words, they should have been made 2 weeks ago when there was no pressure. It's just that we didn't do our due diligence. We didn't make a decision earlier. And so now it's come to pressure. And so that question may seem innocuous, may seem harmless, and might seem obvious. It really isn't. If you think about that, when you look at decisions under pressure, many of those, if not most, were they made earlier or were the research done earlier, could have minimized the pressure and sometimes even eradicate the concept of pressure simply because we spent more time, more people, more resources, more investment, all kinds of things. So that's an interesting question, and I want you to think about it. Why make decisions under pressure? Can we have made those decisions without pressure? What decisions should we make under pressure, and what decisions should we make early, right? One of my favorite books is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and you may have heard of it. It's 30 years old, written by Stephen Covey, and it's still relevant today as far as I'm concerned. The first habit is be proactive. And be proactive is look at issues and challenges early on. Look at these things at the beginning of a project, not halfway down, right? And so that's another concept that I want you to think about as we work through the outline of this class. And the next question is, what are the traits? What traits do you and I and our team have to make decisions under pressure? And you might say, Al, I'm not sure I understand what the trait concept is. Well, it's one big trait that we all have to incorporate is the concept of teamwork. That's a trait, right? Another trait is communication at the higher levels to make these kinds of decisions. Information gathering is another trait that we have to make sure our information is gathered appropriately and properly and succinctly and completely, right? A lot of words, and some of those words might fight a little bit, right? Succinctly and completely, they battle a little bit, but we need it to be succinct enough so we can really look at the points, but we need to ensure that it's complete. And so those are traits that we'll talk about in class. And the next question is, what are tools? And so you all have tools, right? So it could be software tools. It could be decision trees. It could be decision analysis, where we take a decision matrix. There's a bunch of tools that we'll talk about in class that can help our decisions make it more fruitful, more potentially honest, more potentially correct, that we're going to look at. So we're going to balance traits, our traits, with the tools that we have access to and put them together to make the best pressurized decisions. And so we'll talk about that in class. And it's a fun environment to have these kind of discussions, because what we want to do is we want practical exercises and analysis. And so what does that mean? Well, let's make decisions based on you, attendee. You come to class, you put your day in our hands, right? We want to make sure that we're addressing some practical examples. So we don't necessarily want to talk about things that are out there that may or may not, usually not, have anything to do with what you do on a regular basis. We want to talk about things like, I need to make a decision on an ERP situation. What are the tools and the traits that I need to make the right decision, because I'm actually 2 weeks past due, and this happened in the last 2 weeks, and so I need help, right? We want to make it practical. We want to make it usable. Somebody else may say, I'm always stressed because we made 3 bad hires. And so, as you know, hires, depending on their salary, cost a lot of money, and that's absolutely true. It's one of the highest costs for a company is payroll, right? And when you lose somebody, what happens? Well, let's talk about that practically. And so what you need to do, if you look at traits and tools, one of the big traits and tools, or the tools that we didn't talk about that let's talk about right now, is a systematic approach to this, a process, a structure that we can talk about and we can refine and we can make it very crisp and very clear on what the process is. And you always want to do this early rather than wait to when you need it, right? Everybody should be aware of the decision-making process. We should standardize it and allow it to be tweaked, but it's a standard process. And it's something that is proven, and we've worked it, and we've developed it, and we've improved it, and we've moved it forward, right? And so we have this concept of practical exercises analysis as we start to put it together and actually use it. And in our courses, in our workshops, we break you out into groups. So let's say that we have 10 people, right? 12 people. What we do is we break it into groups of 3 and maybe a couple of groups of 4 if we had 10. If we had 12, we break it up into 3 groups of 4, or if we have more, 4 groups of 3, and we can go up the ladder, right? Depending on how it is. But we find that the best discussion is in smaller groups, right? So if you can get 3 or 4 people to make decisions and discuss it, right? So if you look at that bullet, it's practical exercises and analysis. We want to get discussion on what worked, what didn't work, why not, and let's have a group concept. And then you bring back to the overall group some best practices that you learned from class. And you can see that it's a very collaborative environment that we learn how to do better and be better and make better decisions as we go along. And then last but not least is we want to plan moving forward, right? Every workshop you go to, I don't care what it is, always have a plan moving forward, because it's important for us to understand what we're going to do from an overall perspective, right? What are we going to do with this wisdom, with this knowledge? And by the way, the knowledge doesn't come from me and from Deanna exclusively. It comes from me, it comes from Deanna, it comes from you, it comes from your group, it comes from the collective. And that's the best way to learn, right? Where everybody's collaborative. And that's why you want to do these classes live because we can talk about practical application that we can point to and we can adjust and adapt and learn from. And that's why it's very, very important. So as I close, as I wrap this, I want to invite you to come to this very interactive workshop, right? Where we work through what are decisions, what is the rest, what is stress, right? What tools and traits do we need? How can we continue to grow in all of those things? And we do a lot of applicative exercises, real life exercises, and we have lessons learned. And at the end, we figure out each individual may have a different path to go moving forward, but we want to provide that path for you. So again, I'm Al Batinga with Deanna Mendeville, and we have CCS wishing you a great day, great, fantastic time. And we're so grateful that you stopped in, and we look forward to you and helping you make decisions under pressure.